Welcome one and all to the June 2nd, 2020 Analytics Weekly. We have actually a question about recordings from Brandon. Are the recordings being uploaded again? And thanks to some prompting from Ezekiel, they are. So actually, if you scroll down in the agenda here, there are recording links next to the weekly calls. So I guess we've still got a problem with that like password issue, which is causing them not to be uploaded automatically. So at Ezekiel's prompting, I was reminded to do it manually. So anyway, the recordings are there. I will do a better job of remembering to upload them manually, so they should be available more consistently now.
Thanks, Dan. I just noticed that our meeting link doesn't have the password in the URL anymore. Is that intended?
No, I'm not actually sure what's going on with that. I'm actually trying to remember if we updated it, because maybe we didn't. So maybe there's some other problem with the uploading. Maybe this hasn't had the password. I'll look into that. Thank you. And we have, let's see, a couple of FYIs here for people to check out, but those are not verbalized. So we'll jump over to blockers and at-risk items. So Martin, you have an item there.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if it's a blocker, but it could be an at-risk item, right? So I was just curious because, well, mainly because I was out sick end of last week. So I noticed we moved a lot of the discussions around the generic analytics drilling page to a separate epic or issue where we were discussing reusing or refactoring the existing, I think it's Insight Analytics page. So I was wondering if we came to a agreement, or if we can start implementation with the implementation phase, or if there's any decision pending that we need to resolve first. Because if there's still a lot of discussions going on, I'm just thinking we are already in the middle of the milestone. So this could turn into an at-risk item. So just curious if there's anything that we need to resolve.
So, I mean, my perspective is that basically that conversation kind of shifted over to this epic about using insights as the foundation for the generic reports page. And I think, the conversation is sort of active on that. So, another thing is we didn't actually end up putting any of the generic reports features, the MVC. We didn't yet put that into 13.1. So technically it hasn't slipped just because we hadn't finished refining it. So we hadn't put it in 13.1 yet. John Mason, did you have anything, I guess, to add to that?
Well, I'd say Brandon's been doing some great work in helping to move that issue along. So I really appreciate that, Brandon. It would be great to have somebody on the back end team to help kind of tie up the back end issues. I think Brandon has had some questions for the backend team about how certain things might be done. So it would be helpful, I think, to have somebody who's on point so that we can keep that moving and close it out.
I think the main question was about the URL or the slug that we want to use in the URL, right, Brandon? If that's I think that's the last missing piece for you to get started, besides the API spec.
That's correct, yes. So I'm just waiting to confirm so there's 3 endpoints. The first one is the root for the page, and then the other 2 are one endpoint to get the configuration data for the charts, and then one to actually get the data for the charts, just to follow the same pattern that's being used for Insights if we're going to be reusing a lot of the Insights code.
Okay, cool. So let's discuss this async. I was just curious whether it's like on hold now, or I saw there's a lot of progress in the issue happening. Yeah, thanks everyone, especially Brandon and also Pavel and Adam and Dan. and obviously John Mason for helping coming to a close enough proposal or starting point.
Yep. So, and Jeremy and I had talked about the open issue about the routes yesterday. So I don't think we've got open concerns from Jeremy on that, other than, once we start tying this to navigation and so on, which is out of scope for now. So we ought to be able to work through that quickly. Who on the back-end team can help answer the questions and drive the back-end part to a solid proposal?
I can take a look. I mean,
Great, Adam.
I tried to answer some of the questions about the URL structure and give some historical context. But yeah, I can help clearing up the rest.
Great.
And I know Pavel's been pretty heavily involved as well. So I'm not sure if he's the empty box on the end of our gallery here, but if he is, he's listening in. Either way, I'm sure he'll be involved as well.
Great. Yeah, so to answer your question, Martin, about it being at risk, I mean, obviously, given how far we are into the release, it might not make it, right, for 13.1. But I don't think we ought to pause. This is, one of the most important things we can be working on. So driving it to a conclusion will just help us to be in better shape for the next milestone.
Yeah, for sure. I think all those discussions are necessary to be on the same page. I was just wondering if we are ready to pick up work on the front end, or if we should still wait for obviously the open discussions to be resolved first.
So John Mason, I think the next section is yours for on deck issues.
Great. So just one issue here. One of the things that we've heard as we've talked to the quality team and to the development team about their use of Sisense rather than analytics features is that today they're embedding Sisense charts in handbook pages, and they can't really do that with Insights or with any of the other analytics features. So this issue is all about taking a chart in our generic drill down page that we've been discussing all along, and making this so that that chart can be made publicly viewable and then embedded in a handbook page so that it can follow the same kind of pattern that is being used in Sisense today. And that would allow those teams to start dogfooding. They've already expressed interest in doing that. It's not the only thing we have to do to unblock the dogfooding. There are some other corrections to calculations and other features that are needed, but it's an important step forward. That will be a fast follow-on to what we do with the generic analytics pages.
Do we know how?
Sorry, please.
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so just quick question about the embedding the chart. Should it be like a live view? So it's like refreshed as you visit the page?
That's right. It's okay. Not a snapshot of the data, it's live data. But it's not making the whole report page public, just that chart, right? So in the context of normal navigation, all the permissions are the same as always. But what we're saying is a specific chart, you can say, with that configuration, this is now gets an embedded link, and it becomes public.
Do we know how the integration
works?
From
that link. Well, I will do more in that. Right now, the issue kind of lays out the things we've just talked about. I haven't gone into the details of exactly how Sisense works. I'll go ahead and add that detail as well so that it becomes more clear.
So I suppose they're loading some JavaScript, and then like you need to include some div container that renders the widget or something like that.
Yeah,
But that's just my guessing.
Yeah, that's probably something like that is happening. Again, I'll drill into the details and I'll capture those in the issue as well.
Cool. So the next section is interesting problems and solutions from last week. And nobody's written anything down yet, but I wanted to go ahead and put out a call. Does anybody have anything they want to show and tell? If not, I actually wanted to call out something that Adam did last week, which was replacing the custom finders in value stream analytics with standard finders, which is going to kind of offer us some more flexibility and less complexity in the future, which I thought was pretty cool. So looking forward to being able to put that to good use. So thanks, Adam. And then we have a final section here, bonus content, and Nick, goes over to you.
Cool. Yeah, so I think there's been bits and bobs of discussion around A/B testing since I've been here, and I've decided upon coming back from my vacation, I wanted to lean very hard into like the immersion design that comes from DevOps, and in order to do that, I think A/B testing is like an absolute necessity. So I was wondering, now that we have Snowplow set up, I don't know whether I spell that correctly or whatever it is, now that we have that set up, do we have any form of capability other than feature flags of starting to run an oh sweet, so let's I suppose my thing is let's just start doing that. Let's identify an MVC issue to work on, so I don't need to like pretend like I know what I'm talking about with design, and just come up with a few hypotheses and start testing it.
The reason I'm excited about this is that Ezekiel brought up this recently, actually today, this morning, and he linked to the experiment enabled. I'm gonna share the link to that in the doc. It's something that I believe at the moment currently grows this or introduced this or is using the capability of this experiment functionality. And I think also Ilya used it in some other feature on Manage, where we wanted to have. So what he did is he wanted to implement an A/B test for a better UX for the project creation, which can be enabled by appending a URL parameter, and then users would see like the new version, or without the parameter, obviously the old version. And in accordance, the two different versions would get tracked differently. So you could really look at the data and make decisions based on which version has better click rate and stuff like that. So that's something that we can look into, obviously.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. So any ideas for opportunities to test that out at all?
How about the value stream navigation, the horizontal? I think we talked about this recently, where we wanted to gather data eventually at some point, which of the two versions, like the horizontal or the stage list, has a better, I don't know. The question is, what is the KPI do we want to use to measure success in this regard?
Yeah, that's true. And it's quite difficult because the end result of value stream analytics doesn't really, you can't do all that much except click through to other things. So maybe the KPI would be more click throughs, although that's not a very good KPI really.
Yeah. Probably not the best feature.
Let's have a think. Let's have a think. I think there's maybe something smaller than value stream that we could start out with, like the chart spinner one. We could potentially try some stuff out with. But yeah, I'm excited about that. Like I'd be much happier just generating a few hypotheses and letting the experiments run rather than like assuming like I know stuff about users.
I should also mention that we have teams at GitLab that are using LaunchDarkly for A/B testing as well, and they have volunteered to give us information about how we could use LaunchDarkly. So,
How do you say that? LaunchDarkly.
That's right.
LaunchDarkly, yeah. I've been using that product for a while. I really like how it works. It's very easy to use.
I'll have a look at it.
Can we also link it to the agenda? I'd also like to look it up.
Sure.
I'll send the link in the document.
Awesome.
So,
thank you.
Let's say next steps are we look out for a potential teeny tiny issue that we can test this out on, and then we can generate a couple of hypotheses and chuck them into an A/B tool that we decide is best to start out with, and then we can also test some other stuff while we do it. Nice. And thinking about analytics as well. Not analytics is at the category, but analytics is just general user analytics. I've forgotten to put the link in, but I'll share my screen and then talk about it. So you'll see there's this nifty little objects section within Pajamas now, and there's a report documented. And it's MVC, so it's pretty basic, but what I've done is just documented like the purpose of the report and the key workflows that we want associated with the report. In other words, the generic drill down page. And the way I've structured the report is you'll have like one job to be done. And the first stab I took at the job to be done is when I drill down into the detail of a metric or chart, I want to view, filter, and visualize the data set so that I can spot patterns and take action on the information. And then there are a number of generic stages that you would go through in order to achieve that job to be done within the report object. And what we can do is look for signals at each one of these stages to understand where the user is in the process of this job to be done, meaning that we can be a little bit more contextual with the way that we approach them when we start to understand it. So my question here is there a way when constructing the generic drill in page, the report object, to start tagging some of the UI elements that we are putting in there with some of the seeing, whether we can get the signals from them in order to understand more effectively what they're doing, and then use that to inform ourselves, but also use that to like automatically serve up stuff in context of where they are. So page analytics. More, I could summarize it up a little bit more effectively. What capabilities have we got around page analytics?
So the Snowplow will actually allow us to monitor clicks and so on. You know, in its first incarnation, there's nothing to do, right? There's a chart and there's a back button, and that's nothing else, right? That's it.
Yeah.
The next thing that we will do is add a data table, you know, and make columns clickable. That can be instrumented. We'll start adding features to the table for sorting and filtering. And then we'll start offering options about how the data on the chart is displayed, whether we're grouping by month, day, or week, and so on. So as we start adding features, we certainly can be instrumenting them as we go.
Yeah, and then does it have the capability of not only providing us with insight into what the user is doing, but allow us to take action on those insights, like in real time?
What sort of action are you thinking about?
So for example, let's say the user has clicked on a chart and they come into the report object, and from there we see that they have started to scope the data in the filters, and they've stopped there. They haven't then clicked on a chart or a table. They haven't scrolled underneath the filter at all. So we're pretty certain that they're currently within the scoping phase. So an example here is like, could you bring up and I would never do this, but could you bring up a pop-up saying, it looks like you're stuck on filtering right now. How can we help you with that? I wouldn't do that, but an example of things that you could do when you understand where the user is in their process.
I don't think the snowplow data is ordinarily used to do that. I mean, I think it normally just feeds a system that allows us to look at the analytics offline and see what's going on. But I think you could, if you can design the experience, we can code it, and then it's just a question of like cost benefit, for the different experiences and, the level of effort to implement. So I wouldn't worry too much about the particulars of snowplow and so on.
Okay, so I suppose the very first stage is configuring our report pages in a particular way so it aligns with these stages within the workflow that I've sort of outlined, or whatever iteration that we take on that. So we get a better understanding of how far users come along through that process, and it's almost like a sales funnel or something like that. And then we can see where they go wrong, and we can start using that to generate ideas of how we can increase the flow through that funnel and all that.
That's right.
So does that require an issue, or is what do we do about that?
Well, we can ask the front end team. My gut is that whenever we define a new feature, if we've got some snowplow requirements for how that particular feature should be instrumented, we just make that as part of the feature. And I see Martin nodding, so at least he likes the idea.
Makes sense to me. So I suppose this combined with the A/B testing will basically set ourselves up in all these new feature issues to think, what do we want to learn about this, and how can we instrument snowplow in order to learn the best we can about this?
Yep.
And I know that we have some form of page analytics at the moment around value stream or whatever it may be. And I'm just wondering, do we have a place or a dashboard where I can go to sort of see the traffic in a little bit more detail? Because I keep on reflecting, I'm just like, I'm not working with that much data at the moment. I'd like to be working with a little bit more data.
Well, Nick, I'm happy to show you the stuff that I've got access to in SciSense and kind of walk you through what I know of that's there anyway. I certainly have been poking around at it.
I'll put that on our one-to-one.
And we can record that session in case anybody else is interested.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. Yeah, I think that's exciting. That'll make design work less of a airy-fairy thing and more of a hard thing.
I love that we're moving in that direction. That's great.
Cool. Jam and Nick to record session from SciSense. Cool. I think that's everything from me, but there's a question here. Respond to apparent customer intent in report. Oh, that was just the example that I outlined. Okay. Anything else from anyone else?
I think that wraps up our agenda.
Cool, cool, cool.
Well,
All right.
wishing everybody a beautiful first week of June, and talk to you throughout the rest of the week. Thanks, everybody.
I
Bye.